Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon here in the Bronx, coming to you on this will be out on January 3rd day of the new year of 2024. And I wanted to speak with you a little bit about one of my passions, which happens to be anime, and how that is interacting with one of my other passions, politics. And believe it or not, these two things are coming to a head, and you're hearing about it, and you'll probably hear more about it in the coming weeks and months of this year. But before we get to that, let us take a moment to say, if this is the first time you're seeing our channel, we welcome you and we thank you for being part of our audience. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary. And, of course, every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out on all the social media that the internet overlords will allow to be able to hear your voice in tweets, in chats, even in phone calls sometimes, to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all. Because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to free speech. It is not just an American principle. It is a right of everyone across the world. So even when your government doesn't agree, even when the internet overlords are pissed off, we invite you to join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to talk about these issues that are affecting us all. So let's give you a little bit of a background. I'm a fan of anime. I've been a fan of anime for a very, very long time. I think I started being a fan of anime going all the way back to about the late 1980s when a friend of mine, also in the Bronx, an old friend I grew up with, introduced me to Dragon Ball. Actually, it was Dragon Ball and then Dragon Ball Z. And I watched the entire series. I became part of the 86 million fans that watch Dragon Ball. Over the years, as I've gotten older and older, I watch a whole slew of many different types of anime, even currently. In fact, it's been probably a decade, maybe almost two, where I stopped watching television. That includes cable. I don't really watch that. I don't watch movies anymore. I'm not interested in the Hollywood entertainment anymore. I watch anime, I watch news, and every so often I also listen to manhwas. But I pretty much have separated myself from the Hollywood machine. And by the way, when I say I'm a fan, for those who have been in my studio in the southern tier of New York, you may have noticed, I have my figurines too. But I bring that up because in recent weeks, there's been a lot of talk about something called localizers. Essentially, it's people who translate the Japanese anime into English for the subtitles. And sometimes that's also used when the anime is dubbed over into English. They often go by the subtitles as the script that is going to be read in English. It's something that has been happening in anime for God knows how long. And it's very common that because it's being translated from Japanese or Korean or, God forbid, in Chinese into English, there are certain translation errors. There are things that don't quite make sense all the time. And nowadays, the people who actually do that, they're called localizers. But think of them as translators. And we have been seeing that there is a bit of a scandal that has been building up because in Japan, they're going to be moving from using human beings, American translators, and going from them into AI. And so that's a big thing. Everyone's talking about the move towards AI. The thing is, it isn't about AI. It really isn't. It isn't about technology. This isn't something like we hear about in Hollywood where the writers are worried about AI taking over their jobs. No. But it is about wokeness. It is about the ideology, the progressive ideology here in America and how it's affecting every other country and how it affects Americans as well. I'm trying to take this big subject and whittle it down, but it's something that we have been seeing for a very, very long time, and this is the natural consequence to that. Going back to 2019, this was an issue that many of the translators, individuals who, some of them have gone to colleges like Harvard or Cornell, Cooper Union, many of the colleges here in the United States who have been indoctrinated into the progressive agenda, the mindset of gender identity and identity politics in general. They've been getting the jobs. They've been changing the work that they're getting. So instead of actually translating what was written in the Japanese art and anime and the manga, they actually turned it into some woke messaging and injected that into the public, which very often ruined the jokes, the tone, the meaning, the types of characters that were being created and loved in Japan and throughout the rest of the world. In fact, many fans, like myself, who may be reading the manga, may be reading other translations, will fall in love with these characters and enjoy these series until we start to see this pervasive push from the left that once again is going into beloved fandoms and warping them, twisting them, injecting their feelings and their desires onto the works of others. And of course, the result of that is now we're seeing the pushback. Whereas these localizers, these translators previously were able to get away with a lot, now Japan is saying, we don't need you anymore. Go away. You're useless. You're actually counterproductive. You're costing us fans. You're causing people to leave. Kind of like the viewers of Doctor Who no longer want to see Disney Who. Like the fans of Star Wars stopped watching Star Wars. How fans of Star Trek or Lord of the Rings have all walked away from these beloved franchises that have lasted for decades in some cases. They're walking away and they're just giving up on it because it's been infected with this wokeness that has destroyed the core elements of what they loved. Now, you may have been one of the individuals like the Hollywood critics that loved the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, the Rings of Power by Amazon. The critics loved it, 83%. Except looking in at the viewers, looking at the subscribers, the paying customer, the fans of the Lord of the Rings, they hated it. Only 38% actually enjoyed Rings of Power. And in fact, as we've seen in much of the data that's come out since, we know that over 50% of the people who started to watch that series actually gave up on it and said, no, it's not worth our time or effort. Even though it's got a season 2, it's already considered a dead series, rightfully so, because the writers decided they could do a better job than the original. They decided that they needed to make this for a, quote, modern audience. You hear that all the time. They've made the movie, the series, the book for a modern audience. They had to correct it for the sensibilities of a modern audience. Hell, that was the justification we were given in 2023 when publishers went into the works of Roald Dahl and decided, hey, they have to change classics like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, something that was so good, so successful. They've made several different movies based on these characters, including one that just came out in December of 2022. They destroyed these franchises by destroying the words, the language, the meanings that were put in there, the lessons that were created initially and have stood the test of time, because it isn't about the test of time. It's about the message. We've heard this many times. You may have heard of a YouTuber called The Critical Drinker. He's coined that message, the message. You may have heard about Nerdrotic, and he coined the MCU. We have seen it in many different formats. And of course, there is Disney Who that we're seeing right now that has failed as well. this movement towards a modern audience that doesn't exist has failed and cost not just new audiences the opportunity to enjoy what the older audiences enjoyed, it's destroyed everything, the legacy that had been created and laid down. And that's kind of sad. Now, you may say to me, but Mike, that's a lot of entertainment information. Fantastic. But you deal with politics. That's correct. And again, I want to emphasize what's the problem here is that this is about the left pushing racism. This is racist. We've been seeing this mostly in English writers. When they go to Roald Dahl and they change Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. When they go to The Lord of the Rings and they create the Rings of Power. When we've seen them go into many of the classics, Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, George Lucas and Star Wars. Many of the individuals they've gone after are English-speaking writers and producers and directors. So we don't notice that they're culturally appropriating and destroying what they're touching. So another great example of this is Robin Hood, the Canadian revisioning of the classic British folk hero Robin Hood. And unlike the Adventures of Robin Hood, unlike the Disney animated version, this was in a quasi-ghetto, and Robin and his merry men, well, Robin's a woman, the merry men were not so merry, and some of them weren't men, and they were all a gang and thieves. They were just criminals. In fact, the hero was John Prince, the exact opposite of the original story told in England. But again, no one was really paying attention because, oh yeah, it was a low-budget Canadian show. No big deal. Oh, this was all in English. But remember, this was done by Canadians, by Americans. They were perverting a culture. And that's one of the things. You often hear from the left how they love to talk about, well, cultural appropriation and changing and destroying what was culturally there, except it's okay to do that to the English. That's okay to do it to the Irish. It's okay to do it to the Scottish, to Americans. You can pervert their culture, their history, their classics. That's okay. But everyone else in the world, we have to protect them, except when they don't align with the progressive ideas. And then they start perverting them. And in fact, we are paying tax money, billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars a year to allow this to happen. In 2022 alone, the United States spent $2.6 billion on gender equality in trying to convince countries around the world that they should be more like California, a state that even Californians don't want to be a part of, a state that one of its big claims to fame currently is that people are defecating in the middle of the streets. Yeah, we want the rest of the world to be more and more like that state. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? But lo and behold, $2.6 billion wasn't enough. Because as we saw in 2023, the Biden administration was looking to spend $3 billion to try and convince the rest of the world to be more like California, to change their cultures into California, to give up whatever their religious beliefs, their ideology, their culture, and become California. This is an election year. So you can be rest assured to maintain that progressive base that Joe Biden is desperate for, that he needs as he has RFK Jr. breathing down his neck, as he has been consistently losing in polls with Donald Trump, as we are seeing that poll after poll after poll has said Democrats don't want Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. He needs to shore up his base. And one of the things you'll see is he's going to, once again, use gender and racial politics to try and prop himself up so that he'll be able to have a good showing in 2024. So you'll see them probably spend $3.5, maybe even $4 billion on gender equality around the world trying to convince the world that they should be California to reassure the progressives of California that they are correct, that they have got the right idea in terms of our entertainment and in terms of our society. So part of the problem is money. And of course, money is politics. So there's part of the reason why this is political. What we're seeing happening with Japan, and they're going into AI rather than using translators because they're trying to escape becoming California. They don't want their anime, they don't want their manga into American comic books, which have failed. The comic book industry is falling apart. Superhero movies are falling apart. But Godzilla Minus One is doing record-breaking numbers. Manga and anime are surging in terms of entertainment and value because people want to hear those stories. They believe and can relate to those stories, those characters. And let me debunk one thing very quickly for those who see anime and go, well, they're all about white people. Everyone in an anime, Japanese anime, they're all Japanese. There are very few black people. There are very few white people in Japanese anime. They're almost entirely all. You look at the characters, and I know I've seen a lot of American goes, well, they're just Americans. They're just white. No, they're Japanese. They're not white. Be that as it may. So what we're seeing here is the left is doing exactly what it loves to say the right is doing and what they say they want to protect other cultures. But in fact, they're looking to destroy them. And they're getting money to do so. And they're rejecting it. That's why they're going to AI. They're taking out any kind of opportunity for the left to continue to do what they've been doing well before 2019, which is inject woke ideology. So the politics here is not just the money, and it's not just the fact that it's the United States government under Biden and Harris trying to convince the rest of the world to become more American, more progressive, American progressive. No, it's not just that, but it's also the left being racist because they're trying to destroy cultures around the world to fit their feeling, their desire, their vision of what should be equal, or more importantly, what is equity, to transform the rest of the world through its entertainment into categories that can be ranked and arranged arbitrarily by a group of elites that no one ever gets to elect and whose decisions no one has influence on. People who've been watching anime, that read manga, they've heard about this, and we've had this discussion for a long, long time. We don't want wokeness in the Japanese anime, into the manga that we read, South Korean or even Chinese. We don't want that. We want their stories as they put them out, which very often is even better than the United States in terms of being equal. There are many, virtually every anime or manga have strong females that are females. They have individuals who may be cross-dressers, who may be trans. You have individuals, men who are strong males. There are weak males. There's individuals, there are human beings in these characters. They have characteristics that reflect everyone in humanity. And they don't have to belittle just this group of people to achieve the goal of having a good story or to send a good message. And they've been doing that for decades. Instead, what we're seeing is the males, you have to dumb them down while raising up the women and destroying the entire story. It's The Last Jedi. Look at what they did to Rey. She became the bestest ever because everyone else was an absolute moron. And she was overpowered on top of that. Mary Sue all the way. I know this is a little bit about entertainment. It's a little bit of politics, but it's coming together. And it's about the willingness of the left to accept racism when it fits their political agenda. They're perfectly fine to have segregation except they're going to call it a safe space. And they're going to say it's voluntary. Yes. The black people at these colleges that have been indoctrinated, they made the choice to segregate themselves. Yes, the principals, black principals in Illinois, have made the decision to segregate their classrooms. That's their choice. No one forced them to do that. But at the end of the day, is there any difference? It's still segregation. Whether you call it a safe space or not, whether you call it voluntary or not, it's still segregation. And didn't we go through an entire movement, the entire 50s and 60s, to deal with that? And yet we're going backwards, and the progressives tell us that's a good thing. And we're trying to sell that idea around the world. I don't want my tax money, and I don't think you want your tax money, to go and try and convince the rest of the world to be California, a place I don't want to live in, and even Californians don't want to live in. Hell, the family of Gavin Newsom left California to go to Florida. So what's happening right now with anime is bigger than just the translations, the localization. It's much bigger than that. This is about politics. This is about gender ideology. This is about destroying the Japanese culture and replacing it with California's culture. And I think that's insulting. I think that's evil. I think it's destructive. And it's definitely not art or entertainment. It's propaganda. It is literally the progressive movement trying to insert their propaganda in every form of entertainment and media around the world so that everyone complies with them. And it's not working because at some point, nation after nation after nation says no. We tried to give $200 million to Pakistan in 2021 for them to turn their nation into California. They took the money and laughed in our face. We're watching this happen across the world, and now we're seeing it happen in Japan. And people are losing their jobs because of wokeness. And that's a good thing. No, I don't want anyone to lose their job, but you know what? If the choice is, I could either have woke entertainment, or I can have an AI do the job and get good entertainment instead. I'll take the AI every day. Japan knows it too. That's why they're doing it. Because it's more cost effective. It's more of what the fans want. It's more true to the art. It is more true to their culture. And how dare the progressives say Japan can't do that? That Japan is the bad guy for daring to not be woke the way California is. That's insulting. If you tell the woke entertainment industry that they're being evil, that they're destroying a culture, they'll turn around and say, no, you just don't understand. You're racist. Wait a minute. I'm using their rules. I'm using their terms and their definitions. They're destroying a foreign culture. They're imposing their ideology on a foreign people. That is evil by the definition of the left. Why don't they understand that? Why can't I, as an American and a member of the world, just enjoy the entertainment as it was made? Is that so hard? Is that so difficult? Take the politics out of entertainment. Take the politics out of foreign countries that don't want it. I don't want them to have the same problems that we have to deal with Harvard University, with Cornell University, with Cooper Union. We have enough problems here in the United States to deal with for the next decade. Let's not spread it around to everyone else. But these are my thoughts about what's happening in anime, what's happening with localization, or in other words, translations, and the evil of the progressive movement that the mainstream media just isn't going to say, but I will. Bring on the AI. Bring it on.